Hey crew, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun and creative scroll saw project video, we're going to be making a miniature Celtic clock. I think it's going to be really cool, just in time for St. Patrick's Day. You can see I already have my green on. Of course, this can be interpreted as a St. Patrick's Day project if you want to do so in your mind's eye. I've already got the patterns photocopied to its full size and attached to our material with clear packing tape, and the design we're going to be doing comes from a very old issue of Creative Woodworks and Crafts magazines. Now, we've already done some projects out of this magazine. It's packed with so many creative designs. This is January 2008 to be precise for those curious, and the design we are going to be focusing on in today's video begins on page 6, and here you see the miniature nature of it, the Glasgow Clock, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, by Dan and Ray Wilkins, and again I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly, but you can see the beautiful Celtic fretwork like detail of this clock, and the thing is, it's not going to be very large. As a matter of fact, it can fit in the palm of your hand, so it's going to really test your skill over at the scroll saw for cutting out miniature designs. You guys know, if you've been following a long time, that I really love miniatures and creative dioramas and everything, and when I seen this project I thought, hey, I'm going to have to make it and bring it to life over here on the YouTube platform. Now, the following pages have a nice article on how to cut the project out, the materials you may need, the clock face you will need, the size and everything, and then the following page is the assembly diagram. So very good articles in these old issues here. Now, the material we're going to be using, because of the miniature nature, is 1/8 inch thick basswood, and this is a sheet of it for laser engraving that my buddy Robert up in New York gave to me when he came down to visit last year, and you can see how flexible this material is, so it's going to be very fragile and very delicate to cut over at the scroll saw. Keep in mind, this is the 1/4 inch material I like to use over at the scroll saw, and then here is the 1/8 inch material, so you can see how fine and delicate the project will be. And I primarily use this material for laser engraving, so it's going to be really cool to make a scroll saw project from start to finish. And because some of the pieces are very fragile and delicate, I only need 2 of some parts of the clock, like the 2 sides. I need 2 of those. I need 2 supports, you know, I need 2 pieces for the roof, but I'm going to go on and stack cut and make 2 of everything. So I'll have some additional pieces, and that's just so that these fragile parts will be supported during the scrolling process over at the scroll saw. So there you see the side panels, and you see it says cut 2 of them. Here is the roof, cut 2 of them, and again, everything is attached with clear packing tape here. And then you have the back, again it says cut 1, and a lot of this was laser scraps, so you can see where I actually done some laser projects with this material. I off-cut to get the patterns attached. Then you have the front where the actual clock face will go and be displayed and tell time. And then you have all of the small and delicate pieces here. And speaking of the small and tedious nature of the project, you guys know that primarily I use a number 5 ultra reverse tooth scroll saw blade to cut everything out. Because of the delicate and fine nature of this project, we are going to go down a few sizes to a number 2 reverse tooth shark tooth blade. Here they are in the tubes, and these blades are very delicate, so I think they will be appropriate for cutting out all of that fine fretwork. We have made a nice clock in the past. As a matter of fact, we brought this one here to life in a previous video. This beautiful Steve Good design here is a previous video over here on the channel, and it is made completely of that 1/4 inch material I showed you earlier. So we're going to be making another clock design to tell time out here in the workshop, and it's going to be cut out completely from start to finish over on the Rikon scroll saw. So since everything is pretty much prepped and prepared, let's move the camera over to the workbench so we can get out the Seiko scroller's drill, drill the pilot holes so we can start making some sawdust. And over here on the workbench, we are taking the Seiko scroller's drill and a tiny drill bit and drilling out all of the pilot holes for internal cutting. And as always, I have a backer board behind the scroll saw work to prevent blowout of the pilot holes on the reverse side. There is quite a few internal cuts on this project, but once we get all of them drilled out, we will move over to the Rikon scroll saw, and we will be ready to begin making sawdust. Beginning here with the front face of the clock, and as I said at the beginning of the video on the intro, I
am cutting through 2 stack cut pieces of 1/8" basswood here in this very thin material to cut at the scroll saw, and I wanted the pieces to be supported as much as possible, so I am stack cutting all of the parts, even though I only need one of the clock face here, one of the back, one of the bottom. I will ultimately end up with 2 of each piece that we cut out, so I will have some leftover parts that I will show you at the end of the video. Of course, with the material being 1/8" in thickness, you could of course stack more than 2 layers. For all of the scrolling on this project, I'll be using a number 2 reverse tooth scroll saw blade, so a lot smaller than I traditionally use, but it is appropriate for all of the small and delicate cuts on this project. Here on the close-up view, you can see how small some of these internal cuts are, and with small projects like this and with small cuts like this, sometimes it feels like it takes longer to retension the blade and thread it through the pilot hole, and everything, than it does to do the actual cut. But you can get in a very good rhythm over at the scroll saw, which is what I have done here. I've just got on some good music and I'm lost in the world of sawdust. The pattern that we are bringing to life here comes from the old discontinued issues of Creative Woodworks and Crafts magazines. And as always, I'll show that magazine once again as we get ready to close the video. Now we will release the 2 roof panels here and set them aside. But now I've moved a little farther along in the project, and it's time to release all the pieces from the waste wood, and that's just simply following that long outside perimeter cut line. And as I get each piece cut out, I'm setting it aside on the workbench, which again is why I like having an L-shaped workbench when working over at the scroll saw. If you guys like what you're seeing, I would highly encourage you to subscribe to my channel and also follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. I'd really appreciate the support. All in all, it took me around 1 hour and 15 minutes to cut everything out completely from start to finish over at the scroll saw. But now that all of the scrolling is done, we can remove all the pieces from the waste wood. And here you can see how I was talking about where I would get extra pieces, and I'm just setting those aside. But again, I did need 2 of some parts like the sides and the roof and everything. But then it will be time for sanding, and I'll sand everything here by hand with a high grit Klingspor Woodworking Shop sandpaper in this palm sander here that I have. And I'll be very careful to sand all of the parts and pieces. I don't want to be too aggressive because I could end up breaking a piece, which as a matter of fact I did, and I fixed it off camera with some CA glue. But after all of the pieces were sanded up nice and smooth and the excess sawdust was removed, it was time to begin the assembly process, and I'll consult the magazine on how to go about assembling it. And I'll be using medium grade CA glue and activator, and I'll do this in several stages because even though the CA glue dries basically instantly in bonds and cures, I still like to walk away for a few minutes to make sure the glue has completely set up. But here I glued up the bottom and the sides, but then I'll come back and I'll glue on the front and the back, working quickly here with the CA glue. But you could totally use wood glue if you wanted to glue this up. It would just take longer to do all of the glue up. Making sure everything is lined up to the best of my abilities. And now I'm going to glue in these support pieces that were very tedious to cut out, and they go between the front and back legs to give them some support. And one goes on the left and one goes on the right. But as the project is taking shape, you can see how small and compact it is. So it doesn't take up a large footprint on a shelf, desk, or countertop. But now for the roof, I had to bevel part of the wood here, and that's what I'm doing with the sanding pad here. And I'm not using any power sanders at all since the pieces are so small. And I'm putting the bevel on the roof pieces for them to line up on the A-frame. Just doing everything by eye here. But after the roof is glued on, I'll just have the two ornamental pieces to glue on, and then everything will be done with the glue up, and I'll set the project aside for around 5 minutes to make sure everything is totally dried and cured. But I think it came together beautifully. And you could go right to clear coating now if you wanted to and let the natural wood shine forth with the clear coat. But I opted to put a light shade of Minwax wood stain on it. So while the CA glue was bonding and curing, I got out a light shade of Minwax wood stain and my staining supplies, and I gave everything a nice coat. I saturated everything here and then wiped off the excess with a scrap piece of t-shirt material to soak up all of that excess stain, and I hung it on a hook to dry. And when it was dry to the touch, I gave it a couple coats of Rust-Oleum clear gloss, and it really makes the project stand out and pop and give it a nice glossy appearance and protection for years to come. And it hung above the wood stove for a while, and when it was dry, it was time to apply the actual 2-inch clock face to the front for the final bit of assembly. And once I did this, the Glasgow clock was complete, and I put it beside my sticker and my coffee cup there so you could see how miniature and nature the whole project was, but cut out completely over on the scroll saw.
And here we have the completed miniature Glasgow clock, cut out completely over on the scroll saw from start to finish. Once again, showing off what a scroll saw is capable of. And it has some beautiful, delicate, and very intricate details in it. Really, really cool. I want to once again thank Dan and Ray Wilkins, again I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correctly, for the beautiful design featured in that magazine that I'll again show you as we get ready to close the video here. It took me around an hour and 15 minutes to scroll everything out completely from start to finish. It's not an overly complex design, it's just with the nature of it and that thin material that I spoke of, you need to of course take your time and let the blade do the work and be as loyal as you can be to the cut line. But I think it finished up beautifully, and it just shows that with a little bit of time, practice, patience, and effort, you can make beautiful and miniature 3D designs just like this that can fit in the palm of your hand. But really, really neat, really creative, really happy with how this came out. And keep in mind, at the beginning of the video, I told you guys that I was going to stack cut all of the pieces, even though I only needed one of some of the pieces, like this front face here, this support here, the bottom. I only needed one of those, but again, because of stack cutting, I have pretty much half the pieces to make up another one of those clocks. And because I just use clear packing tape to attach the patterns, for those pieces that I need extra of, I could of course just tape the patterns right onto some fresh material and keep on making sawdust and finish up and make a second one. And because it's made out of 1/8" material, I believe you could stack cut 4-5 layers at one time and make multiples of these and finish them in different and creative and unique ways, just to show the versatility of one individual scroll saw pattern that you cut out and make in your garage or workshop. I finished this one in a standard rustic finishing way. After everything was glued together, I kind of looked at it and I'm like, I kind of want it just to stay natural, but the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to try to make everything seamless and go together, if that makes any sense. So I did put a light shade of Minwax wood stain on it, and then after that was dry to the touch, we give it a couple coats of Rust-Oleum clear gloss, and you can see it reflected in the lights of the workshop. As you can see here at the top, there is some small and tedious details, just about as big as my finger there. So of course, taking your time over at the scroll saw is essential in this project. And keep in mind, I used a smaller, more finer blade than I normally use over here on YouTube. I used a number 2 reverse tooth blade as opposed to my standby, which is the number 5 ultra reverse tooth blade by the Shark Tooth brand. So that number 2 blade was great to get in there and get all of the cuts and everything. And of course, the clock face here, this 2-inch clock face, is just a friction fit. That's why you also have a hole in the back where you can go in there and poke it out, so you can change the battery, reset the time for daylight savings time and everything. So you could really go above and beyond with this project. If you wanted to mill down exotic or hardwoods, that would be totally cool. I also think it would be cool if you would bulk the project up to cut it out of 1/4 inch material. Remember, I showed you at the beginning of the video, years ago out here in the workshop, we made this beautiful fretwork clock, which is an older Steve Good design and uses a larger clock face. It's kind of funny and really unique that this clock here can hide behind this one here, that both of these were made from start to finish completely over on the scroll saw. And this is why I love going through the old magazines, the old articles, the old web forums and pattern catalogs, just to find unique patterns like this. And of course, it does have those Celtic knots on the side, so it really has that St. Patrick's Day flair to it, even though it is not painted green. But really, really cool. Again, very fragile, very delicate, and with the miniature nature of this, it can easily freestand on a shelf, desk, or countertop, or sit on an office desk, and you can tell somebody, hey, I made this completely from start to finish, and it would, on a scroll saw, and it would strike up a cool and unique conversation. But once again, here is the photo of the visual that we had to go by in the magazine, and I'll show the cover here again in case you guys want to seek this project out. And here is the one we made in today's video. Again, with the small miniature nature, the whole project fits in my hand and could hide behind the magazine, so it's kind of like, surprise, look what we made. And again, just with a little bit of time, practice, patience, and effort. And the details are so immaculate and so tedious. Now, of course, I've glued everything up with medium grade CA glue and activator from Klingspor Woodworking Shop. And of course, if you want to take your time and let everything dry appropriately with actual wood glue, by all means go that route. But with the manner of releasing a weekly scroll saw project video over here on YouTube, I of course use the CA glue. I hope that makes sense. But you have the beautiful design there, the authors up in the corner with an introduction and how to best go about making the project. On the following page, you do have the assembly diagram with your parts list and everything and where to get some of the parts. And then the next page is the final assembly diagram there. So very well, very clear written instructions in this old issue of Creative Woodworks and Crafts Magazine. I'm so happy that we have this archive to go back and look at projects with. January 2008, for those curious. You can see the nice musical inspired design there on the cover with a bunch of delicate scroll saw work on it, but really, really cool. Now, during the sanding process and assembly process, you see me take it and bevel it because, of course, the two roof pieces, and hopefully it shows up here on the back, need to be beveled so that A-frame roof will meet properly, as well as where the sides stick out on the A-frame structure at the top of the clock. And I didn't use any kind of power sanders in today's video. I don't have it laying right here at hand, but I used that small sanding pad that I've had for years. It's meant for sheetrock work, you know, to smooth everything out once you put the mud and everything on it and it dries. But I have found it works exceptionally well for small scroll saw parts that you cut out to where you can sand them without having a fear of breaking them. Of course, it's loaded with a great Klingspor Woodworking Shop piece of sandpaper, but I hope the results here speak for themselves. And this would make a great gift to give to somebody for a birthday, an anniversary, a special occasion, a retirement party, anything like that. But again, the way you interpret a project in your mind's eye is totally up to you, the maker of the project. But one really cool look at it here before we finally close the video. Really happy with how everything came out, and it was really cool to make another clock over here on the channel, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching me make it and bring it to life from start to finish in today's video. But this is the Glasgow clock, cut out completely from start to finish over at the scroll saw. That's going to be about all for this one. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and also follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one. And remember, crew, if I can make it or do it, so can you guys. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, and I'll see you guys real soon.